Here, I dragged my wonderful fiance out here. She to a secret location here in Maryland somewhere, and she is like, "What am I doing? And what is this?" Here's the thing. I always say that. Remember, whenever I say something is a thing, I say, "Here's the thing,"
Right.
and then you got to brace for it. I brace for it.
Okay,
I say,
I'm braced. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. I'm from the mindset of the GSD, get stuff done, and done is better than perfect. Sometimes people don't record stuff because they don't have a fabulous set. They don't have the 2.5 neon signs in the back. They don't have the couches. They have the podcast microphones. But sometimes I believe that the content is more important than the background. Even though background's a little nice, I want to hear you, I want to see you. But I just really believe that should be the thing, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
All right.
So with that being said, I don't even know what to call this. It's just a conversation. It's just candid conversations. And I don't think I'm the host. I think we're just talking about it. But we want to talk about widowhood. You talk about it. We talk about it a lot. See, there's one thing, Connie, I think we do. We talk about it a lot, but we never put anything on camera. I said, some things I want to save for camera, and because I know other people can be blessed by it.
Right.
Right? And I think that, I can't put our cell phone every time we're driving.
Right. Exactly.
Record an episode. And you don't know episodes, but it just, so we'll take it back a little bit here. My name is Chip Tazar, and this is
Connie Gilmore.
And we're engaged. So if you're watching this, or if you're watching it months later, we may be married, prayerfully. No, we will. All right.
Cut. No.
I said prayerfully. If I don't drive you up a wall. But I passed the family reunion test. So I'm going to cut in some B-roll of us at the family reunion and people talking and laughing. If I passed the auntie test, I think I passed that test. So you've been past the test with my family, so that's not even an issue. But so I don't take up the whole space because Connie is never on mute, right? We want to talk about widows and finding love again. And I want this to encourage somebody who needs to hear this today. And so, Connie, I'm just, I saw our friends do something like this in Atlanta. Pastor Nick and Kimball Boyd.
Yeah, they did.
They're fancy set.
Yeah.
That's a matter. It's still about the thing. So, about finding love again, podcast, but it's really about your journey and widowhood. And, I wrote a post and you saw it, and I didn't land in, and truth be told, I did not tell you about it. A lot of things sometimes, for good or for bad, for better or for worse, I should bring you along, but I totally surprised you with a post about things I learned engaged to a widow, right? That it caught you off guard in a good way. But a lot of people were fortunate and blessed by that post. But I just want to expand on that and talk about this, not only from my perspective, but from your perspective. And can you share a little bit about your own experience and journey as a widow? And there's a lot of people that think that, they'll never find love once, but if they find it twice, it's like lightning in a bottle. So talk about that.
Wow. So, I mean, this journey is like, there aren't words really to describe the intensity of the journey and all the layers that widowhood entails, the grief, the layers of grief, the pain, all the things. And so there are a lot of things that you have to, go through, even with your children, with your family, with yourself. Widowhood alone, typically families lose at least 35% of their income. So a lot of times it causes you to move because you do a lot of changes, right? And so part of that, as you go through that process, there are a lot of times I get a lot of calls about a lot of different things because, of course, with Premature Widow, I support women and men on this journey. And so they have lots of questions. And this is the place where they can come and get a lot of the answers or talk about things that they can't talk about with, their friends or their family members because they just don't get it, right? And so they ask about, one of the most popular questions as the journey goes on is, how do I know I'm ready to date? And most times my first answer is, well, the fact that you're asking me about dating means it's on your mind. So you're somewhere in the neighborhood of being ready.
And I want to interrupt you real quick because for people that don't know, talk about I want to tell you your journey and talk about the ministry and the organization that you founded in
2015.
So I don't want to you talk about
right. So Premature Widow was founded in 2015 after I lost my 38-year-old husband in June of 2014. And so during that time, he was 38, I was 40. So 40-year-old widow, my youngest child was 6 at the time. And when I looked around, widows just didn't look like me. And so I had a really hard time figuring out how to find someone to talk to who understood. My mother was a widow, my mother-in-law was a widow, but they had 40 plus years of marriage and all their children were grown. So to have become a widow, a young child, a child just went off to college. I mean, it was just, it was something I'd never prepared for and didn't have any resources. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find anything that was specific to the younger widow or the widow with children. And so ultimately I created what I thought I needed, and it ended up being what so many other widows needed. And it's grown into this organization that has helped young, older, middle-aged, and alike, on this journey. And we have become a family. We can talk to each other. I'm kind of the nucleus, but they've developed their own relationships off of that. And so that's where it came from. That was the purpose of it, to try to help me, but it ended up helping so many other people. And so it's just been a blessing to a lot of people.
And with that said, we'll circle back to the dating and if everything about widowhood is finding, I know everything about widowhood, it's not about finding love again. It's really not finding
yourself.
There it is. You said it.
It's about finding yourself, because what happens is the woman that I was on June 23rd, 2014, that's not the woman that's sitting in this chair. That person is gone. You definitely have to recreate yourself. And it's not something you want to do, but you have to do it. And when people say your new normal and the things you have to do differently, that's all part of the process, because, first of all, pain and grief will change you, okay, in different ways. And so I just feel like, I'm just not that same person anymore. You think differently about life. You see life different. You even love differently. And so and I impress that upon widows, because a lot of times the question is, well, how do I not compare? If I'm going to date, or, how do I not feel, there is some survivor's remorse, right? There are some feelings of, you feel like, oh my goodness, am I cheating? Do I feel so bad? He got sick, or he died in an accident, or whatever the reason or cause, and you feel guilty because you're here quasi enjoying your life and he couldn't. And so you have to process and deal with all those feelings as well. But you do have to find a way to recreate you first and foremost. And I think that that's so important to the journey and to the process. And once you find you, whatever's supposed to attach to you from that point will automatically find itself to you.
Wow. So how important, how important is it for widows really to give themselves permission to explore the possibility? Because I think you said it's finding yourself, right? Mm-hmm. But they have to give themselves permission. You share a lot with me, and I hear a lot. I've never walked a day in those shoes, but it seems that we have this thing till death do you part, and then they need to the possibility of new relationship while honoring. Remember, I said in my post, I said two can coexist, and I realize I've been dealing with dating you and being engaged to you now, that it can coexist and one does not diminish the other.
Not at all. But again, like you said, like you mentioned, it's allowing yourself in that space, right? So once you feel like, or a widow feels like they're ready to date, here's, the first thing is you kind of feel like you want the approval, right? You want to hear the it's okay from the people in your circle, your family. But guess what? 9 times out of 10, that's not what you're going to hear. But guess what else? It's still okay. It's okay to go out on a date. It's okay if you want to go to the movies with someone. One thing about this journey is it's a very lonely place. It's the loneliest place I've ever been. Okay. And so sometimes you want to, even if it's nothing major, you just want to sit across the table from a man or a woman or whatever your preferences are and have a dinner, have something to drink, a laugh, a conversation, and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay if you decide to date. It's okay if you don't decide to date. Like whatever your choice is okay, but don't allow other people to dictate how you move, when you move, and who you move with. That's where things get tricky, okay? Because a lot of times when we're in these spaces of grief and trying to find ourselves and getting ready to try to move forward, a lot of the people that are closest to us, that love us the most, try to hold us into the space that they're most comfortable with. And so, of course, my new mantra is, of course, and I've been saying it since last year, is don't allow anyone, and when I say anyone, I mean anyone, to keep you in a place of suffering to make them comfortable, because you're comfortable in that space. And a lot of times, and I've been noticing even in this season of engagement, that people prefer to see you suffering than celebrating, because that makes them uncomfortable. But you have to be able to push forward in what makes you happy. Life is very short. We all know that. Here we are in these situations where life is very fleeting. And if you get an opportunity to smile again, to laugh again, to love again, take those opportunities, live your life, and don't allow other people's opinions to dictate how and when you do that. And I mean, it's sometimes easier said than done, but it's a practice that we have to adopt, because it's crucial in being able to move forward.
Now let's talk about really navigating emotions. And you talk about this, about having people keep you in a place, because when I hear that, I understand it, but in my mind and in everybody's mind, no one really does that on purpose. It just happens. And the social person, it happens, because nobody's going to say, "Hey, I want you to suffer," but it just happens.
Right.
You talk about a lot of things. So with society, how can widows cope with these like external pressures when it comes to relationships, even new relationships? Because there are people that when you are married, that you're coupled up, and now that you're widowed, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't.
It just happened.
It's so not only do you experience this life-altering change, right? And so it changes everything about you. It will also change everything about your circle. You'll look around, like I look around now, my circle is completely different than my circle was almost 10 years ago. And you find that the people that you might have done double dates with and spent time with and family stuff with, those people aren't there anymore. Those relationships did not survive the test of time, right? And so, in the words of my mother-in-law, those are fair weather friends. Those aren't the ones that are there till the end. And so, but what I've learned over this process, even in some of the hurtful spaces where that has taken place, is that I'm now learning is that you can't take everybody into every season. Every season is not for everyone. And so sometimes we have to shed, just like any other season, spring, summer, fall. When fall comes, a leaf have to shed so that the winter can come. Some leaves we have to shed, and we don't pick those back up. And it's not any negative necessarily thing, but it's just you're in a different space, and everybody is not assigned to each season of your life. And that can be a very hard pill to swallow. It was for me, but it was very freeing once I got to a place where I was able to accept that, move on, and I noticed how God just started bringing the people in that were assigned to this time and space of my life.
Yeah, it's really a shedding.
It's absolutely
a shedding, and I believe that's the season where people are. So we want to move into just a few more things, but not too much. It's really about opening up to new love. And what advice would you give to widows who are hesitant to open their hearts? I mean, you get that a lot. Someone can just celebrate an anniversary and death, and you hear people saying, and I hear people saying, he's gonna turn over his grave, and he knew that you were out there in the streets. So you're like, she's for the streets. No, not the streets, but no, seriously, no, joke aside, it's a thing because you want to honor, birthdays and Father's Days, whatever days you have. But there's no time, because people can say this, for instance, Connie, to say, "Oh, you've been widowed 5 years. That's enough," or "Okay, you're good to date." So they give you permission. Well, you only been widowed 3 months, but we know historically widowers, men, remarry quicker
Absolutely.
than with
Absolutely.
women, widows. So
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy can be married, married a widow 6 months, 90 days, 90 days.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, that's kind of how it goes. And in most cases, it's the widower who has children, most times smaller children, younger children, because we all know, the woman is most times the nucleus of the home, and, the caregiver and all those types of things. So when they get and find themselves in this space, they are usually a lot quicker to try to find someone to help them raise the children. The women, on the other hand, we're used to being, having to kind of bear a lot of the brunt, right? And so we just continue to do that. And because we're so conscious of not only our feelings, but the feelings of our children, the feelings of our in-laws, the feelings of these people, that people, you know what I mean? It sometimes will box us in when we feel like we are ready to date or to go out or to explore other opportunities, even to think about remarriage. You're more concerned about how other people are going to feel about it than you really allow yourself to really open up to it. And so that's part of the challenge, right? So part of it is because if you're not in a space where you're ready to just say, okay, I would love to have their approval and they're okay and they're, push to do this. If I don't get it, I'm still going to do it. Until you kind of get to that place, it'll be a little more difficult, because now you're sneaking and you're hiding and you feel like you're not giving yourself fully to whomever you're dating, because, you don't feel like you can, but you can, and it's okay. It is okay. I mean, I got to a place where I realized that whether I never went on another date, if I never married again, any of those things, the reality is Todd Gilmore is not coming back. And so life has to still move forward, not move on. I'm not trying to erase him. He can't be erased. He's unforgettable. He's irreplaceable, all of those things. But I have to move forward and continue to live my life. And I feel like I still have a lot of life left to live. And I know that there are a lot of widows that feel that same way. There are some that feel like they don't have anything left, but we have to remember that even though we had experienced great loss, we have to cherish what remains. And there's a lot of things that are still left, family, friends, a life to live, and it doesn't have to be marriage. It doesn't have to be dating, but whatever it is, you have to embrace that thing so that you can find that thing to help you live and, live your life again, smile again, love again. And that might mean learning how to love yourself again, not just another individual, but even yourself, because that's hard too. So it's a lot of layers and a lot of emotions that are attached to this, but there's life after loss, and not just life, but life, it can be even more abundant than the previous life. It really can, because what I've learned is that what I needed when I got married at 27 is very different than what I need post widowhood and now going into year 50, right? And so it's just a different experience altogether. And so if you don't allow yourself to even be open to it, you never know what type of experiences you may be missing. I remember one of the widows who's remarried, she was saying how her new husband, he opens doors for her and pulls out her chair and all those things. Her late husband, that just wasn't their thing. He didn't love her any less. That just wasn't his love language, PDA, all of that. So some things you have to get used to, but once you get used to it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. These are all new things. And so you can embrace the new and still honor and respect what was in your late husband, right? And so me loving Chip, me marrying Chip does not water down 1 ounce of love that I've ever had for Todd Gilmore. Those two things coexist. They don't have to exist separately, because there's enough love in my heart for my past, but I'm loving and looking forward to my future.
And for me as a sidebar, and for people who are listening and watching this, and men especially, and women, and too, you have to be secure in yourself enough to know that those two things can exist. From day one, and you know one thing, Connie, we'll share our story on one of these episodes, but without sharing too much of our story, you know from day one that you and I, one thing I know, I never felt threatened when, you know, I'll remind you, hey, let's go to the grave, let's do this. And I'm not just saying this to make me, and you
absolutely,
to make myself sound good, because I understand that's part of your life.
Right.
And if that's part of your life, I'm not here to cut that off.
Right. And I'll say this, you did that very early on. The very first, you know, before we were engaged, and we weren't even seriously dating. Yeah. But that day came up, I was going, and you were like, I'm going to go with you. I'll go with you. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't have to go. Because, again, to be honest, nobody has ever done that before. And so, but you made it certain that it was something you really wanted to do. You weren't trying to gain brownie points by going or whatever. You were really concerned about it. You put it on your calendar. And so it meant a lot to me for you to go. And it was just your posture even there. And I don't even think I ever said this to you, but you went with me. You stood at the back of the car. I went up to the grave. You weren't there with me overbearing. You waited for me to come back to the car. It was just your presence. And that's another example of something else that I say all the time, which is there is ministry and presence. It was your presence. It wasn't necessarily of anything else. You didn't try to come up and then the next time that we went, you did go up to the grave and, you know, paid your respects. But that first time you were very respectful. You you got out the car, stood by the car, waited till I came out. I was even emotional when I came back to the car. He hugged me, you know, all the things. And I was just like, wow, this is a very, a feeling that I didn't, you know, I hadn't accounted for. I really hadn't. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you. There's no playbook for this, right? There's nobody tells you, okay, when she goes to the grave, you stand 5 feet behind her and then 10 steps.
Right.
And then as soon as she drops a tear, you come with a box of clean.
Right.
Ain't nobody say no. And even you said that everybody's different.
Everybody's different.
You can't do it.
Right. It has to be what comes naturally. And that's what came naturally to you to do. And it meant the world to me because it was kind of almost like you were standing back there saying, I got you. Go up there, do what you have to do, but I'll be right here and I have you. And that through our hills, valleys, ups and downs, that's been your posture from day one. I got you. And so that has meant more to me than I could probably ever even say.
And just to say this, and this is just a sidebar, and this will probably be shared later, that mentality has not come, that's come at a cost, because this is, as men, we're all work in progress. And it's not, I'm not here to say that I'm perfect at all. No man is perfect.
No man. Exactly.
But it's coming at a cost, but it's coming at a cost that I know that pays dividends. So a few more questions, and then we're going to end this up, Connie, because this is very practical. Well, I want to talk about some practical tips and encouragement. What's some practical tips for widows re-entering the dating scene? You know, I mean, are there certain things that you would advise that may be particularly helpful? I mean, because there's maybe someone listening and say, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a try. Winter's coming, and, you know what I mean? As a young one say, cuffing season, but no, Lord, you had to bring something in. That was real. That was real. So I don't even know what cuffing season is, but I know I know it starts with football season.
Okay.
There's football season, and at the time of the statement, football season is on the way. So, all right, and it ends right after Valentine's Day and Super Bowl. Anyway.
You sound like you know a lot about it, but anyway, go on.
I don't know. I don't know how I know that.
Okay.
So anyway, about entering into the workforce, the dating scene, again, tips, because it's hard.
No, it's hard.
And the whole may be tainted, I know.
No, I know. Yeah, and you will, And so I think first and foremost is to be open to it, right? That's the first step. Be open to it. No, he may not, here's the thing. One of the biggest things is he's not going to, in most cases, he might not look like your husband. He's not going to talk like your husband. He's not going to smell. He's not your husband. That part of your life that chapter has closed, right? But give yourself an opportunity and give yourself a chance to go, and just be okay with that. The second thing, which I believe is even more important, is enjoy yourself. Like, just go to have fun. A lot of times widows, we date like we're married, right? Because that's all we know. And so you go out a couple, because you go out a couple of times and you start calling, and then next thing you know, you want to know where he at every second, and you want to talk to him and all. We get attached easily because we've been detached, and so it's easy to start dating like you're married. But you have to remember that dating is what? Collecting data. There you go. So date, enjoy it. Don't with little to no expectation, right? Just because you got to dinner with him don't mean he gonna be your husband. That's not what that means. So that means you went out, you had a nice dinner, you had a nice time, or a jazz festival, and does not mean he's gonna be your husband. If he turns into being your husband, that's a bonus. But that's not what that means. But no, just give yourself an opportunity just to lighten up. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself permission to just go out and have a good time and not have any type of expectations for long-term relationship. Will his last name not go to your last name? All these things go into our mind, or how will other people feel about him? None of that matters. You're just going out for a good time, and take your time and just pace yourself. And you'll start to see how you feel about that person or any other person, and how you even feel about dating. I know widows that have gone out a couple of times, like, I'm not quite ready. I'll try it again in a few months. That's an honest thought, right? Honest feelings. You're able to say that, but you won't know until you what? Try it. So if you feel like you want to go out, if you've been asked to go out, they don't have to pick you up. You can meet them there. There's so many different things that can make it very kind of platonic, but still at the same time give you that same feeling. You're dressed up. It's something about that feeling that I can't explain. But if you give yourself an opportunity to experience it, I think you'll enjoy it.
So can you share at least, I know one story. I don't want to just give you the softball question, but it is one success story. I always say success story. Well, just one example of a widow who's found love again, a widow and a widower. I know we went to a wedding a few years ago with a widow and a widower.
Correct.
And I know that particular widow came to an event. So talk about that.
Yeah. So her name is Cherie. And Cherie came to our very first premature widow conference. She lives in Florida. She flew into D.C. It was in Virginia. And she was very new on her journey. And the one thing about coming to anything with premature widow, there'll be people in different phases and stages, right? So there'll be some that are 3, 4, 5 years along. It might be somebody that's just a few months along. And so that was the case at that event. And she was very verbal when we got to the place about talking about the possibility of dating, about going out, remarriage. And, her position was, no, not happening. Absolutely not. God's going to have to send it himself. Her husband, she that's just something she was not interested in doing. And in fact, she was a little bit offended about the fact, I think, that we were even having that conversation, right? Because she just wasn't ready. And that's okay. But fast forward to probably a couple of years later, she started to be ready, right? And so we've had conversations since then, about dating, and, she's gone on a couple of dates and met a few people. And then a couple years ago, she was introduced to someone through a mutual client that she went out for coffee one day, and coffee turned into lunch, and lunch turned into dinner. And long story short, they've been married a year this February. And so he was a widower. They met, they had some things in common, but she gave it a chance. And so you can go from saying, I'll never get married again, I don't want to date anybody again, to being whole, engaged, and get ready to get married. Like it's just that, because that's a normal feeling in the beginning, and you can't really imagine it, and you can't fathom the thought. But as life goes on, and as you change with your grief and your pain lessens, and life starts to really happen, and you feel like, I'm in an okay place here with this. I haven't forgotten it. I still have my moments, my tears, same here. But I know that there's more life for me, and I want to share it with somebody. I feel like I still have a lot of love to give. I don't want to live the remainder of my life, however long that is, alone. I'd love to share it with somebody. And once you start to feel that, get to that place, open yourself up, the possibilities are endless.
So that's it. I was going to even have a conclusion here, but I don't. Thank you, Connie, for sharing this. And there's so many layers to this. We could probably go on for another 45 minutes, but that would be not doing an injustice. But this is just such an important conversation. And there are other layers to that when it comes to that, and even our story,
right?
And our story and our journey needs to be a thing, because we've had hills and valleys and ups and downs, and we've come to the fire and the flood, and I'm always saying stuff like that, right?
He wanted to preach so the
fire and the flood. But anyway, I'm just thankful for you and your, not only your ministry, but your spirit, your heart. And I know that other people are thankful for you, and your voice matters. So I want to say that. I say it privately, but I can say that publicly as well. Just so you know, I brought Connie in here today. She had no clue what I was going to talk about. Like, well, I think no clue. And thanks to Ty for producing this, and he's switching the cameras and stuff like that. And but he had no clue. But in typical Connie fashion, she, he or she who is flexible shall never be bent out of shape. So be flexible. And when it comes to talking about this, she can talk about it 24/7, 365, because she's lived it. Mm-hmm. And when you live something, right. I'm not saying that that it's the only thing, but it's a big thing, a big part of your
part of my life.
And people that have not lived it, and where your shoes is harder to that.
Yeah,
we haven't even gone through the whole church aspect. We haven't even talked about family, friends, girlfriends.
Right. Even now being, because I've, ventured into a whole nother path of this from now being engaged, planning a wedding, and didn't realize some of the feelings, not just mine, but of other people that were going to come up, and whether they came up, whether they were verbal or just something I picked up on, the comments about, like you said earlier, now you get an opportunity to have a second great husband. I haven't even had one, stuff I never even thought that would even come into people's minds. And so it's so many layers to even getting to the place. Once you get into the place of love again and, remarriage and getting engaged, it's a whole nother set of, feelings, questions, even emotions that are tied to, getting as we prepare, and, we're under 200 days now to starting our life together. And, there's some thoughts and feelings that come up even with that, and so it's a lot, but it's a wonderful journey to be on. I'm excited about it. I'm thankful, I'm so thankful, and one of the things I have to continue to remind myself is, this wasn't just something that just happened, right? I feel like, I'm 9 years in, almost, it'll be 10 years next year. But I feel like it's a harvest for the seeds that I've planted, right? Over not just, I took my own grief, and while I was trying to heal myself, I was pulling other people along, trying to help them get healed too. And that's not everybody's testimony. Because a lot of people, they'll help you, but they ain't gonna help you till they finish getting healed, right? But I was pulling people along while I was wiping my own tears and slinging my own snot, trying to help them. And so God promised me this. Like, so I, when people say, oh, this your second chance, and, I haven't had it's not your time, right? This is my time. This is my season, and God has prepped me on my winning season.
Your winning season.
Right. And then that makes some people uncomfortable, and that's all right too. But I'm going to keep on walking in my winning season, because I know that God has prepared me for this, and it wasn't just by happenstance. And so.
Wow. But she closed it out like so great. And how can people find out more about Premature Widow and your ministry? You can look right here at this camera here and talk to the people about, just find out more about your ministry.
So Premature Widow is on all social media. We are at Premature Widow on Instagram, Premature Widow Ministries on Facebook. We have prematurewidow.org, and you can reach me via email at prematurewidow@gmail.com. Keep abreast of some of the events we do, at least 3 or 4 a year. Some holiday stuff is on the horizon to come up, and yeah, just come along. It's a family. It's a family, and it's a family that if it weren't for Premature Widow, I wouldn't probably be sitting in this chair at this space and time in my life right now.
Connie, thank you. I don't only appreciate you, I love you with all my heart, and I want to see you continue to be in this winning season, because here's the thing, whether you're winning or you're learning, I'm still going to be there, and we're still going to be there 10 toes down, and we're going to be there, and we're going to make this happen. We're going to GSD. So I thank you for that.
I love
and I love you too. And thank you for watching. And she's amazing. I'm just here and just admit to our old crap.
Stop it.
No, but seriously, we want to come back. And if you enjoyed this, like I said, I don't even call this a podcast. I don't even call it a pod. I don't know what to do. It's a conversation. I don't even have it's going to be like the D'Angelo song, Untitled. How does it feel? We don't know, So, but I'm just saying that it's a conversation and we appreciate it. And Connie, people are blessed because of you, and they're better because of you, what you've done, and you make me better, right? So I know that it's worth more than gold, and your value is there. So thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.